Hi, this is Gundug with a little build and playthrough showing how I go about surviving solo in somewhat more difficult content. Uh, this is the Banished Cells. I wouldn't call it really very hard, but it can be tough for new players. So I wanted to give some hints and encourage people to get into trying this if they're trying to get into something that's a little bit more challenging than Overland, which is quite simple. You really don't need to have any kind of build to get through any Overland other than world bosses. This character that I'm running here is level 24. They have no CP. This account doesn't have CP on it. I'm running a pretty simple build. It's a stamina sorcerer. I chose Eternal Hunt and Vestari as my main gear choices, and I also have two pieces of Daring Corsair. I'm focusing especially on recovery, and you can see I'm using what's generally considered a junk trait, Invigorating. I used Invigorating on everything. It's definitely not the best, especially for people who are trying to achieve DPS. But what's nice about it is that it does give me a bit more recovery. Let's see, we have 7 items here, and they're all giving me 9 of each type of recovery, so I'm getting 63 more recovery from all these items being invigorating. It's nothing amazing, but it's okay for a leveling character. I know normally people want training, which I consider even more of a useless trait, since it only gives you experience whenever you kill monsters. And I tend to get a lot of my experience just from solving quests or doing daily random dungeons and the like. So anyway, Eternal Hunt. What's nice about this one is that it gives me quite a bit of stamina recovery, which I like, and it has the extra stamina bonus, and then the nice little effect, which is kind of funny. If I do a roll dodge, I need to get away from something that's going to hit me hard, or I just feel like doing it for laughs. It leaves behind a bomb that blows up from anybody who's attacking me. And then as far as Vestaris goes, this gives me a little bit more stamina and some health, which is useful for a leveling character. And actually, Magicka doesn't hurt either, so it lets me cast my utility skills a bit more. And then it gives me a bit more recovery, which is definitely nice. And then it also gives me this bonus for resurrecting an ally, which is pretty useless for soloing, but I decided I would give this a try just for laughs. And then the last choice was this Daring Corsair. And to be honest, I probably should have switched Vistaris for Daring Corsair because this has somewhat nicer traits. In this case, it gives me a little bit of stamina recovery for the two-piece. But overall, it would have been a better choice because it would have reduced my weapon ability cost by 10%, which would be excellent. It would have given me uh, a little bit more weapon critical for more damage. And then the minor heroism, which gives me more ultimate while I'm in combat, is quite useful. But this is hardly an optimal build, and it's just basically you can get away with almost any kind of gear soloing if your setup is good. But I definitely wanted to focus on getting my recoveries up. And as you can see, my stamina recovery is actually pretty considerable, 2,500 here, which means I can keep attacking without really having to pause. I don't need to do heavy attacks, um, and I don't need to be flailing around with nothing to do when something big is coming in to hit me. And the magic recovery is actually pretty decent, so I can keep my utility spells going, and health is okay. Uh, on the weapons, I went with infused in both cases. I'm using a maul on the front bar because mauls give you a little bit more penetration if you have the passive for it, so that ups your damage a little bit. I wouldn't say that it's critical to use any particular type though. You could use an axe or a sword. You'll still get by fine. In this case, I chose to do a stamina recovery enchantment on my front bar. So it does a little bit of damage when it fires off, but also gives me back that 409 stamina whenever the enchantment fires off. So that's quite helpful. On the back bar, I chose to use the weapon damage enchantment. That ups my weapon and spell damage by quite a bit. And it fires off pretty much all the time because I'm using my skills, and I'll show that now. Right here, Endless Hail. As long as I have this firing off on a group or even a single target, it'll fire off my enchantment. So I can keep my weapon damage high pretty much almost all the time as long as I'm diligent casting Endless Hail. And then over here on my, I have Snipe. That's a spammable attack. Honestly, this character hasn't developed enough, and I don't really care for Snipe just because of its cast time of 1 second, but it does decent damage. And over here, I'm also still leveling up the sorcerer skills, and so I'm using this Clan Fear, which is somewhat helpful. It can sometimes tank things for you, which is really nice. And it does a little bit of damage passively. You don't have to do anything in order to get that. And its final thing that's nice is that it will heal you for a decent heal if you need it. Over here, this is another skill I wouldn't recommend to a stamina build, but I'm, as I said, leveling up the skills. This is basically an execute. Whenever the enemy gets below 20%, it does pretty considerable damage, but it's not something that I use in my rotation. I'm really just trying to build it up. Over here, this is an important skill that is one of my main survival skills, Surge. This one, it heals me whenever I do critical damage. So as long as I've got my Endless Hail going and I've got criticals going out, I will be healing, and you can see the heal is pretty good. Every 1 second I could get 2,500 health back. And the other nice thing about Surge is that it gives me the Major Brutality. So I get 25% more weapon damage. It increases my spell damage, though that's not really critical to a stamina build. But I guess since I'm stuck with a Magicka skill here, it doesn't hurt to have that be a little more powerful. This is a skill that I always keep up. It always stays up. As long as you want to stay alive, you always keep Surge up. Over here I'm using as an ultimate Overload. That's basically just to level it up. I don't really care for it myself. It's not a skill that I use, but I want to get these skill lines leveling a bit. And on the front bar, it looks like I've been lazy and I still have Overload. I don't really have any. I'm not even sure. I guess I could bring in a Storm Atronach if I wanted. But anyway, for my main attack skill, I use Brawler. What I do is whenever I'm facing a group, this thing, the more people it hits, the more of a damage shield I get. And if I'm facing a very large group, I can have a gigantic damage shield, and that damage shield gives you time to heal up, it gives you some room to breathe, and it keeps you alive in a lot of bad situations. It's something that you should definitely try to keep up as much as possible so you're not taking big hits all the time. And second, I've got, as my spammable, I'm currently using Wrecking Blow. This is another cast time ability. I don't personally like these cast time abilities just because they don't flow well for me, but it does pretty good damage. And it also gives you empowering. So if you're using your light attack weaves, your next light attack will do 40% more damage. If you're diligent with light attacks, it's definitely a good skill. And then to execute enemies, I'm using Reverse Slash. It does more damage when you're hitting an enemy that has 50% or less health. I only really use it when I see him around 25%. That's when it seems to be doing pretty good damage. I use this to try to get enemies killed quicker. Then I've got my Clan Fear again because you have to double bar it to keep that out. And then here I'm using Hurricane, which it does two things for me. It does damage, so that's a nice bonus. It damages in quite a large area, and it can do decent damage to groups. But the main thing I like about it is the major resolve, where it gives you 5280 more physical and spell resistance, which I think is really important. And it does give you that minor expedition for 10% more speed. So overall, it's pretty useful. Just for the sake of it, I'll bring in that Atronach here. There we go. Alright, so now I'm here in the Banished Cells, and I'm going to give it a run through. This is the first time I've been here with this character, so let's see how it goes. Right now I'm just using for food just these trash drinks that you get in the rewards periodically. I also crafted up some Jewels of Misrule. This I think is pretty much a better choice. This one ups your 3 stats: health recovery, your magic recovery, and your stamina recovery, where Jewels of Misrule doesn't give you quite as much recovery, but it does give you the nice 357 to your stamina magicka, and it increases your max health, which gives you more survivability. As you can see right now, I'm only running 14.5k health, which is a little low, but it actually isn't too bad for this kind of stuff. And for the potions, I'm just using these pretty low-level junk potions. They're tripods. You can also get those purple tripods that drop. Oh, good, I got some of them. That you get in the rewards periodically. They restore all 3 of your main stats. I think they're excellent for survival. And while this potion is running, you get the recovery, so you don't run out as quickly. But I made these junk potions a while back. They do basically the same thing, though not as much as you can see. These are only level 3 and I'm level 24, so they're not scaling well, but it's better than nothing. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to use up these drinks because I don't really care to keep them in my inventory. And I'll do a run through of Banished Cells and we'll see if I can handle it. I'm just going to skip through this quick. So before every fight, what I want to make sure I've got going is my Clanfear, who is desummoned. And then I have my Surge. You can tell your Surge is running because you see your hands get all zappy. And then I make sure that my Hurricane is running. Now, as you can see, my resistance, which was pretty low before, is a little bit better now. I'm getting almost 25% damage resistance. These 2 things you definitely need to keep an eye on. As you can see, the Hurricane doesn't last for a very long time. We got it for about 14-15 seconds. And then Surge, you have about 30 seconds. So to start the fight, I drop an Endless Hail on them and then switch to my front bar. Then I use Brawler, and you can see I have, it's a pretty large shield, about 10k shield. And even if I'm just sitting here spamming this, and the Arrow Barrage, or Endless Hail rather, these guys don't last too long. And you can see I wasn't doing much, and it was quite a simple fight for me. Now if you're going into these fights like I used to as a new player with no good self-heal running, no sustain, you'll find that these can actually be quite difficult. You'll start dying very quickly. I get my buffs up, put my hail on the largest group, Brawler up, and then if I get a chance I can hit them with my spammable. If I see somebody who's low, I can hit them with my execute. Use my potion because I actually was getting hurt pretty hard. But as long as you keep your Brawler up, you're really not going to take any damage. You're actually focusing on what you're doing. As you can see, I take a little bit of damage, but I have my Brawler up, and then my Surge actually heals me right back up without me having to really do anything. And there it is. And the other thing that is important to me, even though I could be focusing for greater damage, I'm going for sustain, and you can see my bars are really not dropping at all. Alright, so here we go to another group. So this build is pretty far from optimal. And it's a genuine level 24 with no CP, so I'm really not getting a lot of the benefits that I would get. And I don't have a lot of the passives unlocked, so this character could be doing a lot better, and will be once they get leveled up. One thing that you want to think about when you're soloing, oh, there's my cute little set firing off, is when you have a group and they're scattered, you can play with line of sight and make them follow you. And now that they're all clustered up, I can hit them more easily, and you can see how quickly they all die. If I have to run to each guy in every corner of the room, it's going to be a real pain. Alright, so now I'll run into the first boss of Banished Cells. When I was starting, this guy used to wipe out my crew, but now it's really not too hard. One thing that you do want to keep in mind is when enemies are winding up for heavy shots, you probably want to put up a block or dodge or something similar. These guys are to their execute, dead. I'll drop my ultimate on this guy. Since this guy has more hit points than these others that I've been fighting, I'm actually using my spammable quite often. And then I just try to keep track of my endless hail so that I'm actually getting some healing back. Because I will die pretty quickly if I don't have my heal up. Make sure that my hurricane's running. Dash this guy so that he doesn't hit me with his big hit. You can also dodge this attack, it's not really much. The main thing that this guy kills you with is that soul-sucking ability that he uses, this right here. Now, I don't do a ton of damage, so I'm going to drop my ultimate again. Make sure Endless Hail's running. And then I'm just using my execute on him. And there he is. Now, if you're better with your rotation and you're a little more mindful of what you're doing, you'll definitely do a lot better than I am here. This is actually quite sloppy play, but as you can see, I'm still getting through it with no problem. So now I'll move on to the next boss room. In this room there will be a bunch of ads that spawn all over the place, and what I normally see happen is people run from here to here to here, dealing with them all individually. But what I like to do is actually kind of herd them all into sort of one area by line of sighting them. And then I can just destroy them all as a group, except for this guy who's hanging way out over there. And as you can see, even though there were a lot of guys hitting me, I just kept using my brawler, and that kept me alive. Alright, so pull the first switch, and I'll get a bunch of little creeps here, drop my Endless Hail on them, use my brawler right away. Make sure brawler stays up, because these guys will probably wipe me out in a heartbeat if I don't have a shield up. And there they go. Now for the next boss.
There are easier ways to prove your bravery.
Make sure my buffs are up. Drop the Endless Hail. I'm going to drop my ultimate on him. And I get my potion up. Walk out of his AoE. You can also block that. There we go, my potion finally fired. One thing that I always make sure I do with this guy is stay close to him until he does his special attack. Because if you get far away, he'll actually do a charging attack, which I'll show. I'll stand far away like I'm scared of him, and there you can see he did a charge attack, which I don't really want to be hit by. His attacks are pretty easy though. You can just walk right out of them, and you have ages to react to them, so it's not like it's anything you gotta have really quick reflexes for. Just to make sure all my buffs are going. And I walked right into his attack, just barely. As you can see, I'm pretty sloppy with my refreshes. I refreshed my Endless Hail before it was out. If you're going to optimize your DPS, you're not going to be that loose with your skills. But I'd rather have him firing than not firing. In the case when he drops his extra little Shadowrun buddy, I like to try to get them both onto each other so that they're both taking damage simultaneously. So I do maneuver a little bit for it. He's in his execute mode where he's got only about 15% left, so I can now start hitting with my execute move. He's got his little guy up, but he's already dead, so it doesn't matter. Alright, so there's another boss down. I'll move on to the next boss. Now technically, if you want to complete this dungeon, other than completing the quest, you don't need to fight every single one of these bosses, but this is my first time in here with this character, so I'll do all of them. Okay, and that guy's dead. And as you can see, these doors open, so I could theoretically go through here and continue the dungeon and avoid this next boss. Whoops. Oh, man, I'm bad at lockpicking today, even with this cheat running. Okay. Alright, so back down the stairs I go, and I'll be facing the Clanfear handler. Now here's another one where you have a lot of ads all over the place, and they can actually do pretty considerable damage. You can be wiped out by these guys pretty quickly if you're not set up. So make sure I got my bonuses, and what I'm going to do is herd them all over this way by line of sighting them around this corner. Because I definitely don't want to have to face them scattered all over the room. And as you can see, the Clanfear handler didn't come after me, just these guys did in this case. You could also pull her, but since I'm such a wimpy character, I might as well just face them. Alright. And as you can see, the quest proceeds even though I haven't defeated the handler. So now I'm going to take her out too. Get my buffs up. I'm going to drop my ultimate near her.
satisfied, sir? I'm eager to pursue the High King.
Patience!
She's summoning her clan fear,
I need you to heal him. And Immeril is still
which does a
unaccounted
similar
for.
attack to that
You'll
Shadow
need her
Wren,
to
but
face
it's quite a
relief.
bit weaker. She's standing in kind of an awkward spot, but I guess it's okay since I'm still hitting her. Make sure I bash her heat wave that she was trying to shoot at me. Make sure I don't forget to put my surge back up. As you can see, she's a much lesser boss because she's already to execute. And that's it. I can talk to this guy real quick after it lets me.
There's one keeper left. She's in the deep. There isn't.
And goodbye. I'll just skip past it. Alright, now I'll hustle to the next spot. Here's another hallway that has a lot of scattered enemies, and they're kind of a pain to deal with. So I'm going to do my little line of sight trick again. Get them all chasing after me. And I like to get right in this corner over here. And hopefully a few of them will come after me. There's quite a few of them, and I'm spamming my shield quite a bit, so make sure I'm staying up there. And done. So that's that room. And here's another trash room. It's got some more of these guys. I'm going to do the same little line of sight trick. Get them to come around the corner. Have my shield up. And I don't really want to be trapped in this section here, so I'll move out to here. And there they are. Now, none of these groups is really powerful on their own, but if you're not healing yourself and you're not defending yourself, they can put enough fire on you to knock you out pretty quickly. I'll line of sight this boss here, put up a little bit of a damage shield since they are hitting me. Alright, now they're all about as clustered as they can be. My ultimate nearby. Make sure I got all my buffs running. That was weird, it glitched out. As you can see, this boss doesn't really hit all that hard, so I'm not exactly getting pounded on by him. But I'm definitely making sure that I have all my buffs running all the time. Woo! Partner's Guild 4! Okay. That's it for that.
I see her.
Now technically I don't have to wait for this guy, but I will.
She's going to be fine for a little restoration. We should be considering how to handle the High King Lord.
Even if we defeat him, how do we contain him? He's already escaped once. If we could control Daedric magic,
Take your time.
this wouldn't have happened. What do you think, Sirion? Fight fire with fire?
Stay your tongue, Veranil. You insult your lineage by even thinking it. Does the High King Lord's fate appeal to you so?
You know, I really don't have to sit here and listen to it. It'll still complete the quest, even without me sitting there having to do that. Now, I'm going to skip this group in the back just because I don't feel like killing them. But this one I can't skip. Once again, I'm going to do a line of sight so I can try to bring them all as close together as possible. Make sure all my buffs are up. Oh, I just barely caught that. One thing you got to watch out for with these clan fear is that they will jump at you. They have a lot of CCs with that AoE thing that they do, and then the jump. And that one's done. And also having my own clan fear kind of throws it off because I get it confused sometimes. Alright, now here's a pretty sizable pull. There's a lot of guys all over this area. One thing that I like to do is, again, line of sight the whole group after me, because I definitely don't want to have to fight these guys and then have these guys way across sniping at me at a distance. So I get my buff up, drop my hail on those guys, and I'm going to put up a shield, and then I get right in this corner and then wait for everybody to get as close as possible. Alright, now I'm dodge rolling out of there. Get my hail up, my buff up, and as you can see, they just pretty much are nuked. And I level up. As soon as it lets me, I might as well get the level up done. Alright, it really doesn't matter what I choose. Let's take that. Get some more stamina. And I can't update this yet. But eventually, once I can, I'm going to go for a critical surge because I want more healing. You can also check some of these passives in case you can unlock them. But I don't want to waste too much of your time, so I'll just scoot ahead. Alright, now here's another pull. This one, I don't really have a good feeling about line of sight, but I do like to center it right around this clan fear because he's a pain and I don't like him jumping at me. So I just try to center everything around here. As you can see, these guys are tearing me apart, but luckily I can stay alive because I'm using my damage shield and my self-heal, which I just let run off. Alright, we got this last guy, and he's done. Alright, and now we have the big entrance here.
I don't know how you defeated those Banekin, but I'll be
dude.
glad to send more.
Alright, now this guy, I like to draw him in a little bit because he sends out the feast, which he heals with. This is my personal way of attacking him. It gives me some time to knock out his feast before it gets to him. Drop my ultimate. Now, whenever there's a feast out, he will drop that big shot that I just blocked. If you don't block that shot or dodge roll it, you will be knocked down, and it's quite a considerable knockdown. As you can see, there was another feast out, and he dropped another one of those big hits at me. Make sure I stay out of here. Make sure I don't get knocked back by his crushing blow. And even though I was blocking, he still got his attack through on me. But that's why I like to have a little bit of distance, so that I have some margin between his feast getting to him and me knocking it out. The one thing that can be very annoying about this fight is if you let that feast get to him, he'll just keep on healing up. Now I am actually running pretty low on stamina, so I'm going to have to put in some heavy attacks just to deal with this. Got my ultimate. As you can see, my character doesn't have anything that's reducing the cost of blocks, and they're hurting me quite a bit. So I'm going to try to just base a few heavy attacks. Oops, I didn't catch his attack. Usually, if things are going on the right sort of flow, he will do his ranged blue heavy attack thing right after he does his crushing blow. So sometimes that can get out of sequence, and then that means that you're sitting there blocking when you don't want to be, really, since you do want to kind of save your stamina. But hopefully he'll stay on that pattern so that I can keep my block up at the right time. Got my ultimate here. And there you can see he got off sequence, so now I gotta guess when he's gonna do his attack. Now I'm not exactly knocking him out at any kind of great speed, but it's basically just playing the mechanics. I know he's gonna do one of those blue attacks soon. There he goes. As long as you're able to sustain and as long as you're able to play the mechanics, you can get through these things. Even if it is kind of slow and kind of awful the way I'm getting through it right now. There we go. Now he's in his execute, so all I'm going to be using is my execute on him, other than my buffs that I keep up all the time. Ultimate up. As you can see, I'm actually blocking while casting my attack, which is nice as long as you can sustain that. And I got eager and he got one in on me, but he's dead. And there it is. Solo through Banished Cells on my own with a little level 25 character. So I hope that that's somewhat helpful to people, and maybe I'll catch you on another one of these videos. Have a good one.